I learned to measure time differently after my husband died, not by seasons or months, but by small survivals. The morning I woke without crying, the week I stopped setting out 2 coffee cups, the day I walked past our favorite cottonwood without my knees buckling. December 1884 marked 1 year. 1 year since Rancher McKenna shot my husband during a border dispute. My husband was Apache. McKenna was white. There was no trial, no justice. Just a grave I visited when I could bear it, and a town that pretended nothing had happened. I'd built a small life from what remained. My cabin sat at the edge of town, in that space where the white settlement ended and Apache territory began, not quite belonging to either world anymore. The location suited me. I was a midwife, skilled enough that people needed me. Apache enough that they kept their distance after they paid. Every morning followed the same pattern. Wake in the empty bed, start the fire. Make coffee bitter because I'd forgotten sugar existed. Forgotten sweetness was possible. Check my supplies herbs drying from the rafters, clean cloths folded in neat stacks. The leather bag I carried to every birth. The work kept me breathing. That week alone, I'd delivered Mrs. Patterson's 4th child. A healthy boy. She'd thanked me, paid me, didn't invite me to stay for supper. I noticed these things without bitterness anymore. Just cataloging facts, the way I cataloged which herbs needed replenishing before winter deepened. I was good enough to catch their babies, not good enough to sit at their tables. People asked how I was doing. I said fine. We were both lying. But it was the kind of lie that lets neighbors keep talking, lets the world keep turning. Easier than truth. Truth was, I existed in the narrow space between functioning and drowning. And most days, I couldn't tell which side I was on. Evenings were hardest. I'd set out 1 plate, talk to myself sometimes, just to hear a voice that didn't judge. The cabin had its own language, the way the north wall creaked when wind came, how the 3rd floorboard by the stove groaned under my weight. I'd learned which sounds meant I was alone and which meant the house was just settling. Like me, settling. Sometimes I caught myself reaching for a 2nd plate. Then I'd remember. The remembering was the worst part. It meant I'd forgotten, even for a second, that he was gone. I kept my hands busy, kept my door locked at night, kept my heart the same way. That particular December afternoon, I was at Chen's Mercantile buying coffee and dried beans when I heard the news. Mrs. Chen leaned across the counter, voice dropping to that register women use when sharing information that's not quite gossip but not quite public. McKenna's wife is expecting, she said, watching my face, my hands stilled on the coffee tin. Something twisted in my chest. Not quite pain, not quite anything I could name. Due in spring, Mrs. Chen continued. Young thing, his wife, from back east. First baby. I nodded, set coins on the counter, didn't let my face show whatever it was trying to show. The new doctor says he'll handle it, Mrs. Chen added, like that mattered to me. Dr. Harrison says he handles all the respectable births now. Respectable. The word hung in the air between us. I took my purchases and left. Walking home. I told myself it was nothing. Told myself I'd never have to face that particular door. Never have to stand in McKenna's house touching anything his hands had built. The white doctor would handle it. Their white doctor, for their white baby, in their white world that had no room for women like me. I told myself that, and I believed it. I was wrong about that. Wrong about a lot of things. But that afternoon, I didn't know yet. I just walked home through December cold, locked my door, and made myself supper for one. The way I'd done every night for a year. The way I thought I'd do forever. November had taught me the geography of avoidance. McKenna and I existed in the same small territory, but we moved in different orbits. Like planets that never touched, I timed my town visits for when he wouldn't be there. Shopped early mornings when ranchers were still on their land. Heard about his life the way you hear about weather from other people, at a distance. His wife Emma was young, maybe 23, Eastern raised, educated, pregnant. The town women spoke of her kindly, which meant she didn't know who I was or what her husband had done. Ignorance granted her their approval. The new doctor had arrived in October. Dr. Harrison, fresh from Philadelphia, setting up practice in what used to be the old assayer's office. He'd made his position clear from the start. He handled respectable births. The implication being that my services were for those who couldn't afford respectability. Fine by me. I'd learned to live in the margins. But late November, I turned a corner by the hardware store and there he was. McKenna. 3 seconds. That's how long we stood frozen. Long enough for me to notice he'd aged. Guilt had carved new lines around his mouth, threaded gray through his temples. Long enough to see his hands shake slightly as they gripped a bag of nails. Long enough for him to open his mouth like he might speak. I walked past. Didn't run. That felt like winning. My heart hammered for 6 blocks. I noticed that too. Noticed I still had reactions to him that weren't hate. That scared me more than the hate did. The whispers reached me 2 days later. Mrs. Chen again. Her voice careful. McKenna's wife went into labor early. 7 months. Baby stopped coming on its own. I kept sorting through dried lavender. Didn't look up. Dr. Harrison stopped it. Gave her something. Said if it happens again before she's full term, it could be dangerous. Pause. Said he'd handle it. Though, said not to worry. I thought, good. Let their white doctor handle it. I thought, please, God, don't let it come to me. I prepared for Christmas the way I'd prepared for every holiday since he died, by pretending it didn't exist. Gathered extra firewood. Stocked my medicines. Planned to spend Christmas Eve alone with my door locked. Trying not to remember how my husband had loved the holiday. How he'd always found something to celebrate. Even in hard years. Life's a gift, he used to say. Every single day. I'd thought him naive. Now I just thought him gone. The old-timers predicted snow. Big storm coming. They said, worst in years. I believed them they'd lived through enough winters to know. I stocked my cabin accordingly. Beans, coffee. Enough firewood to last a week if I got snowed in. I told myself I was ready for a quiet night. Nature doesn't care about our plans. I should have remembered that. Christmas Eve arrived cold and clear. Then, around dusk, the wind shifted. Snow began falling, not the gentle kind, but the kind that meant business. Within an hour, I could barely see the fence line from my window. I barred my door, lit my lamp, settled in with my mending. Then I heard hoofbeats. Slow. Labored. Fighting through deepening snow. Coming up my path, I knew before I stood. Somehow, I knew the thing I'd been dreading was coming to my door. I didn't rush to answer the knock. Let him knock twice. 3 times. Standing there in my small cabin, heart racing. I held all the power in the world. I could refuse. I had every right. When I finally opened the door, McKenna stood covered in snow. The same hands that killed my husband were shaking. Not from cold. My wife, he said. No preamble. No explanation. She's in labor. It's bad. The baby's breech. I waited. Dr. Harrison won't come. Storm's too dangerous. He said, McKenna's voice cracked, you're the only one within 40 miles. The wind howled between us. Snow swirled into my doorway. I looked at this man who'd destroyed my life, now begging at my threshold, and felt something Strange. Not satisfaction, not quite hate. Something closer to vertigo, the sense of standing at a cliff's edge, about to jump or be pushed. Please, he said. I had every right to refuse, every right to close the door in his face. Let him feel helpless the way I'd felt helpless a year ago. Let him lose everything the way I'd lost everything. The justice in it was almost beautiful. But then I thought, what would that make me? I'll get my bag. I heard myself say. The words came out quiet, firm. McKenna's face collapsed with relief. But I held up one hand. This doesn't change anything, I said. What you did, what you took from me, none of that changes. He nodded, couldn't speak. I gathered my supplies with steady hands. My husband's voice echoed in my memory. You save lives. Love, that's who you are. Was I still that person? Or had McKenna's bullet killed her too? I didn't go, because he asked. I went because I decided the difference was everything. We rode through the blizzard in silence, me behind him on his horse. Holding tight because falling meant dying. Hating that I had to trust him, even for this. The wind screamed. Snow blinded. His back was solid against my grip, and I hated that too. Hated every physical reminder that he was human. Alive. When my husband was neither, I could hate him. Or I could be a midwife. I couldn't be both. Not tonight. His house appeared through the white, warm lights and windows. Smoke from the chimney. Normal. Peaceful. Everything my life wasn't. He helped me dismount. Careful not to touch more than necessary. I noticed that. Noticed he was trying to respect boundaries that couldn't be respected. Not really. Not when I was about to walk into his bedroom. Touch his wife. Deliver his child. I heard screaming inside. Emma. In labor. McKenna opened the door. Heat rushed out. I stepped into the house of the man who destroyed my life. I was choosing to step in. Choosing this. I didn't know yet if that made me strong or just a fool. Emma McKenna lay in their bedroom. Young face twisted with pain. When she saw me, relief flooded her features. Thank God. She gasped between contractions. Thank God you came. She didn't know who I was. Didn't know what her husband had done. She just saw a midwife who'd come through a blizzard. Saw salvation. It hurt her innocence. Made everything more complicated. I set down my bag, washed my hands in the basin McKenna had prepared. Examined her with professional detachment, feeling for the baby's position. My fingers found what I feared fully breech. Feet first. Head up. The labor had been going 8 hours already. This would take all night. Maybe longer. And it was risky. More risky than I wanted to tell her. The baby's breech, I said, meeting Emma's frightened eyes. Feet first, instead of head. It's going to be harder. Going to take time. But you can do it. Her hand grabbed mine. You can save us both. Such faith. Such terrible, crushing faith. I'll do everything I can, I said, which was the only honest answer. The hours began their slow march. Midnight came and went, 1 a.m. I worked steadily checking position, monitoring heartbeat, helping Emma through contractions that came and went like waves. Outside the bedroom door, I heard McKenna pacing, back and forth, back and forth. I tracked his movement even while focused on Emma. The way you track a wolf, even while doing other tasks. Awareness like electricity along my spine. Strange. How you can hate someone and still notice he keeps the fire exactly right. Notice the coffee he brings every hour. Wordless. Setting it on the dresser before leaving. Notice he's made it less bitter than I make my own. How did he know I take it that way? Did he ask someone in town? Did he pay attention to details about the woman whose husband he killed? I hated that coffee. Drank it anyway. Needed the warmth. The bedroom told stories I didn't want to read. Wedding quilt Emma's mother had made. Each stitch careful. Baby clothes already sewn, tiny and hopeful. Books on the shelf. Poetry. Novels. Emma read. McKenna had built her shelves at exactly the right height. They'd built a life here. Ordinary and tender. It would be easier if they were monsters. 2 a.m. brought the first real complication. The baby's heartbeat dropped not dangerously low, but low enough to worry me. I needed to try rotating the baby manually. It would hurt Emma, hurt badly, and I needed McKenna's help. I need your husband. I told Emma during a brief respite between contractions. Need his strength to hold you positioned while I work. She nodded, trusting completely. I opened the door. McKenna stood immediately from where he'd been sitting against the wall, head in his hands. I need you, I said, first words I'd spoken directly to him. Need you to hold her shoulders exactly how I show you. He followed me in, face pale when he saw his wife's exhaustion. Here. I positioned his hands on Emma's shoulders. Hold firm. Don't let go no matter what. His hands settled where I'd placed them. Large, work roughened. The same hands. I pushed the thought away. Focused on the baby. During the next contraction, I worked to rotate. Emma screamed. McKenna held steady, murmuring to his wife, telling her she was strong. She could do this. Our hands were inches apart on her body, his holding, mine working. We didn't speak to each other. Didn't need to. The baby shifted slightly. Not enough, but something. 3 a.m. Our hands touched accidentally. Both on Emma's shoulder during a particularly hard contraction. He flinched. I didn't too focused on counting heartbeats, monitoring progress. But afterward, I felt where his hand had been for an hour, like a burn, like a question I wasn't ready to answer. You can go, I told him when Emma dozed between contractions. I'll call if I need you. He left without argument. Alone with Emma's labored breathing, I let myself feel the exhaustion creeping in. 6 hours of work. My hands cramping, back aching, and we weren't even close to done. Emma kept thanking me every time she woke. Each thank you felt like a stone I'd have to carry later. I wanted to tell her, your husband killed mine. Would you thank me then? But I didn't. I just worked, just kept my hands busy with the one thing I knew how to do. Save lives. Even when the life I was saving belonged to the man who'd taken everything from me. 4 a.m. found me at the edge of my skill. Emma was weakening. The baby still wouldn't turn. I'd been working for 8 hours, and exhaustion was making my hands clumsy, my thoughts slow. I faced the very real possibility that I might lose them both. And if I did, McKenna would lose everything, just like I did. The symmetry was almost beautiful. Almost. Emma's hand found mine between contractions, her grip surprisingly strong. I trust you, she whispered. I know you'll save us. Those words, simple, devastating. No one had said they trusted me in a year. No one had needed me as anything but hired help, kept at arm's length. I hadn't realized how starved I was for simple human trust until she offered it. Something in me cracked open. I didn't want it to. It did anyway. The baby's heartbeat was getting weaker. I had to try something risky, a maneuver I'd only done twice before, both times nearly failing. It could work. It could also kill them both. I had to tell McKenna. I stepped outside the bedroom for the first time in hours. He was exactly where I'd left him, sitting against the wall, head in his hands. When he looked up, his eyes were red-rimmed. "How bad?" he asked. I explained in clinical terms. The baby's position, the weakening heartbeat, the maneuver I needed to try, the risks. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said, "Do whatever you can." Then, after a pause, "I know you don't owe us anything." The acknowledgement hung in the air between us. He knew. He wasn't pretending ignorance, wasn't claiming it was justified or an accident. Just knew. "I know what I took from you," he continued, voice rough. "I know there's no making it right, but thank you for coming, for trying." I should have felt triumph, should have felt vindicated by his guilt. Instead, I felt tired. So tired of carrying hate like a second skin. "I'm not doing this for you," I said. Meant it. I'm doing it for myself, because I need to know I can still choose mercy. That losing my husband didn't kill that part of me, too. He nodded. Didn't speak again. I went back inside. Emma was dozing, conserving strength. I looked at her young face and thought about mercy, about what it costs, about whether some prices are too high to pay. My husband's voice came back to me, a memory from 2 years ago. We'd been helping deliver a foal, working through the night together. The mare was struggling. The foal was Breech. "Life's stubborn," he'd said, hands gentle on the horse's flank. "Fights to be born even when everything's against it. That's the miracle. Not that it's easy, that it fights." He'd been patient, kind. Those qualities had gotten him killed. He hadn't seen the danger until too late. Hadn't believed anyone would actually pull the trigger over a boundary dispute. Kindness can be fatal. But I was learning, so can its opposite. Hate is heavy. I'd been carrying it for a year. And I was so tired. Tired of the weight. Tired of being the wronged woman. Tired of my small, bitter life. What if I saved them? What then? Would it mean I'd helped the man who destroyed me? Or would it mean I'd proven I was more than what he'd done to me? I looked at my hands, midwife's hands, healer's hands. My husband had loved these hands. I would try the maneuver, not for McKenna, for Emma, for the baby. For myself, for the part of me that was still fighting to be born into something new. I washed my hands again, said a prayer. First real prayer in months. "God, if you're there, not for him, for her, for that baby, for me, let me be someone who can do this." Then I positioned my hands on Emma's belly and began. McKenna's eyes were on my back through the doorway. Waiting. Trusting. I hated that he trusted me. Hated more that I wanted to deserve it. 5 a.m. brought the moment of truth. I talked to the baby through Emma's skin. Hands positioned precisely. "Come on, little one. Turn for me." "Your mama's waiting. Turn." Emma was barely conscious, beyond exhaustion. I pressed, gently but firmly, feeling for the exact angle that might convince a stubborn baby to shift. Felt resistance. Felt the small body rigid in its wrong position. Then a flutter. A shift. Yes. I breathed. God. Yes. Come on. The baby was turning, slowly. Reluctantly, but turning. Then I saw the blood. Too much. Emma was hemorrhaging. The shifting had torn something. And now We had minutes, maybe seconds, to get the baby out before Emma bled to death. McKenna. He burst through the door. Your wife's bleeding. I need your strength. Need it now. His face went white when he saw the blood soaking the sheets, but I snapped him into focus. Look at me. Not her. Me. Do exactly what I say. Exactly. He nodded, jaw clenched. I positioned him behind Emma, holding her upright. When I say pull, you pull her back against you. When I say hold, you don't move. Understand? Yes? Emma roused slightly, confused. What's happening? You're going to push. I told her, hardest you've ever pushed. Your baby's ready. You ready? She nodded, gathering her last reserves of strength. We worked as one unit. McKenna's strength, Emma's courage, my skill. The three of us locked in this desperate dance. Push, I commanded. Emma pushed. McKenna held her. I guided the baby's feet, now finally in position. Hold. They held. I adjusted my grip. Again. Another contraction. Another push. The baby's legs emerged tiny. Perfect. Terrifying. Then the shoulder stuck. Time slowed. I felt for position, for the exact angle that would free the shoulder without breaking it. Emma was screaming. McKenna was praying. I was beyond both, in that place of pure focus where nothing exists except the problem and your hands solving. I adjusted, pressed, guided. The shoulder cleared, one more push, and the baby slid free into my hands. A boy, tiny, covered in blood, blue, not breathing. Emma collapsed. McKenna held her, both of them watching me hold their son, who wasn't breathing. I cleared his airways, rubbed his chest, tipped him to drain fluid. Rubbed again. Come on, I whispered. Come on, baby. Breathe. Nothing. I realized I wanted this baby to live. Not for McKenna. Not even for Emma. For itself. For me. Because I needed to know life could still win. Because I needed to believe healing was still possible. I breathed gently into his tiny mouth, rubbed his chest. Please, I said. Please breathe. Seconds stretched to eternity. McKenna watching the woman whose husband he'd killed trying to save his son's life. Emma barely conscious. Me holding this not breathing infant. Then a gasp, a cough, a cry. The baby's lungs filled. His color shifted from blue to pink. His voice, small and furious, filled the room. I held him close, making sure he was truly breathing, truly alive. You did it, McKenna said, voice broken. You saved them both. I looked at this tiny boy in my hands, at his parents, exhausted and grateful, at the blood and the struggle and the impossible thing we'd just survived together. Life is strange. Death takes, but sometimes, if you're lucky, you get to give back. I'd been given back something that night. I didn't know what yet. Didn't have words for it. But I felt it. Warm and terrifying. Like hope, like forgiveness, like the beginning of something I wasn't ready to name. 6 a.m, dawn approaching. Emma slept, finally. Stable. The bleeding had stopped. The baby cleaned, checked. Perfect, nursed at her breast. Everything I could do medically. I'd done. Now came the harder part. I should leave. Should pack my bag. Accept whatever payment McKenna offered. Walk out into the clean snow and never return. Keep this transaction simple, professional, finished. But I was still holding the baby. Still standing in McKenna's bedroom at dawn. This tiny boy wrapped in blankets in my arms. And McKenna stood in the doorway, watching, not approaching, not speaking, just watching. The baby's fist curled around my finger. Such a small thing. Complete trust from something so new to the world. Thank you, McKenna said quietly. I don't have words for don't. I cut him off. Don't try to find words. There aren't any. He nodded, fell silent again. I looked at this baby and felt a choice forming. Not about whether to forgive McKenna. Forgiveness wasn't that simple. Wasn't a switch I could flip. But a choice about who I'd be, what I'd carry forward, and what I'd set down. I could hate this child for his father's sake. Could mark him as the son of my husband's killer. Or I could see him as just himself. New, unmarked. The choice was entirely mine. And if I could do that, if I could choose to see this baby as innocent despite everything, then what else? Could I choose? The thought terrified me. If I forgive, I said. Not sure if I was talking to McKenna or myself or God. Does it mean my husband's death didn't matter? McKenna didn't answer. Couldn't. What could he say if I let go of this anger? I continued. Will I lose the last piece of him I'm holding? Is rage the only way I have left to love him? The baby made a small sound, shifted in my arms. I remembered my husband's last real conversation with me. He'd delivered a full breech, like tonight, had come home exhausted but happy. Life's a miracle, he'd said. Washing up every single time. Doesn't matter how many times you see it. Still a miracle. I'd laughed at him. My earnest husband, always seeing wonder where I saw only work. What would you want me to do? I asked his memory. What would you say about this? I knew the answer. He'd tell me to help, to heal. He'd been kind that way. It was one of the things I'd loved most. One of the things that got him killed, he didn't see danger until too late. Trusted too easily. Kindness can be fatal, but so can its opposite. I'd learned that this year. Bitterness was killing me slowly, day by day, making my world smaller and colder until I barely recognized myself. People think forgiveness is about the other person. It's not. It's about refusing to let what they did own the rest of your life. It's taking your power back. McKenna broke the silence. I don't expect forgiveness. Don't deserve it. His voice was rough. But I need you to know what you did tonight. Coming here, saving them. That took... He stopped. Couldn't find words. Good. There weren't words for this. The baby's eyes fluttered open. Dark eyes, unfocused, looking at me like I was the whole world. This baby trusted me to bring him into the world. What kind of world was I making by nursing hatred? Courage isn't fearless, I said, still looking at the baby. Courage is doing the terrifying thing anyway. The terrifying thing wasn't delivering this baby. That was just skill. The terrifying thing was what came next. Choosing to transform my grief into something else. Something I couldn't name yet, but could feel forming. I looked at McKenna. Really looked at him. Saw the guilt carved into his face. The year of suffering. It didn't erase what he'd done. Didn't make it right. But it was real. We'd both been marked by that day. Both been carrying it. Maybe it was time to set it down. "There's something I need to say," I told him, "to your son and to you." He approached slowly, like I might bolt. I bent close to the baby's ear, spoke clearly enough for McKenna to hear every word. Christmas morning. New life. New choices. What I said next would change everything. I held McKenna's son close, feeling his warmth against my chest. The words came steady. Clear. True. "Your papa did something terrible once," I said softly. "He took a life, took my husband from me." "That's truth, little one. You'll need to know truth when you're old enough." The baby's eyes were closed now, peaceful. McKenna stood frozen 2 feet away. "But tonight," I continued, "he came to the woman he hurt most and asked for mercy. And I gave it not because he deserved it, but because you do. You deserve to grow up with a father who knows the weight of both taking life and receiving grace." My voice stayed steady. I'd never been more certain of anything. "Tell him, when you're old enough, forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's choosing who you'll become. I'm choosing not to let what he did turn me into someone who refuses to save lives. That's my choice. Mine. Not his. Mine." I lifted my eyes to McKenna. His face was wet with silent tears. "I will never forget my husband," I said directly to him now. "Never stop missing him. Never say what you did was acceptable or understandable or anything, but what it was, murder." He flinched, but held my gaze. "But I won't let what you did define me. Won't let it take anything else from me, not my capacity for mercy, not my skill, not my future. You don't get to take those things. That's my choice. And you can't have it." I held out his son. McKenna's hands shook as he took the baby, cradled him against his chest. "This doesn't erase anything," I continued. "Doesn't make us friends. Doesn't mean justice was served. Justice wasn't served. The law failed. Failed my husband. Failed me. Failed everyone. I know. He managed. But if you want to honor what happened here tonight, if you want this to mean something, you'll tell the truth." I moved closer, made sure he heard every word. "When people ask why I was here, you tell them what you did to my husband. Tell them I came anyway. No more silence. No more letting the town pretend it didn't happen. I will," he said. "I swear it. Justice may not have come from the law." I said, "But it will come from truth. That's what you owe. Not to me. To him. To the truth itself." He nodded, unable to speak. "What can I do?" he finally asked. "What can I possibly do?" I thought about it. Thought about what would actually matter. Live like someone who knows what grace costs. I said, "Raise your son to be better than you were. Teach him that every life matters, every single one. Especially the lives of people who look different or speak different or pray different than you. Yes. And work to change things. Use whatever influence you have. Make sure what happened to my husband doesn't happen to someone else's. I've been testifying to the Territorial Commission, trying to change the policies on border disputes. It won't bring him back." "No," I interrupted. "It won't, but it's something." We stood in silence. Emma still slept. The baby made small sounds against McKenna's chest. Outside, dawn was breaking clean and white and new. I felt lighter. The weight I'd carried for a year wasn't gone, but it had transformed. Changed shape. Become something I could carry differently. This was my redemption, not his. My choice to heal instead of harm. My power. No one could take this from me because I'd given it freely. That's what mercy is. Not weakness, not forgetting. It's saying you don't get to decide who I become. That's mine. That's always been mine. People think mercy is soft, I said, more to myself than to him. It's not. Mercy is the hardest thing. It's looking at someone who destroyed you and choosing not to destroy them back. It's steel. It's strength. McKenna looked at his son, then at me. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of this. Of what you did. Don't do it for me, I said. Do it for him. For your wife. For every person whose life you touch, do it because it's right. I gathered my things. Checked Emma one last time, sleeping peacefully. Color good. Checked the baby nursing well, breathing steady. My work here was done. At the door, I paused. Looked back at McKenna holding his son in the lamplight of Christmas morning. I was wrong about something. I said. He waited. I thought the hardest thing I'd ever do was survive my husband's death. But this choosing mercy, this was harder. This required everything. I stepped into the dawn. The blizzard had passed. Snow lay clean and white everywhere, covering all the old tracks, making the world look new. I walked into that white morning someone different than who'd arrived in the dark. Not healed. Healing. Not over it, through it, walking into whatever came next. Spring came to the territory the way it always did, slowly. Then, all at once, I stood in my garden, hands in soil, planting herbs, lavender, chamomile, sage. The same plants I planted every year, but I was noticing them differently now. The way the earth smelled. The way green things pushed up through brown. Life returning. The story of Christmas Eve had spread through town. McKenna had kept his promise, told everyone what he'd done, how I came anyway. People reacted as people do, some with approval, some with judgment, some with confusion. The white doctor stopped speaking to me, said I'd undercut his authority, made him look bad by succeeding where he'd refused to try. I didn't argue, just kept working. But other things changed too. More families sought my services now. Both white and Apache. Word spread that I'd saved Emma McKenna and her baby in a breech birth during a blizzard. Professional respect has a way of crossing borders that social acceptance doesn't. Mrs. Chen brought her daughters to me, asked if I'd teach them midwifery. I said yes. Started teaching twice a week, passing on knowledge, building something that would outlast me. Legacy beyond grief. The McKenna family visited sometimes. Not often. Once a month, maybe. Emma would bring vegetables from their garden, leave them on my porch with a brief word of thanks. The baby Samuel. They'd named him was thriving, growing strong. We weren't friends, would never be friends, but there was something between us. Acknowledgement. Shared history. A night that changed us all. Emma never asked questions about that night. Didn't need to. She'd figured it out eventually, heard the story from town gossip. Put pieces together. She knew who I was now, what her husband had done. She kept visiting anyway, kept bringing vegetables, kept that small thread of connection alive. McKenna I saw less often. He was working with the Territorial Commission, testifying about border disputes, trying to change policies. It wouldn't bring my husband back, but it was something, a small attempt at justice where the law had failed. I noted this without commentary, let it stand on its own. My life now looked different than it had a year ago. The door wasn't locked every night anymore. I had visitors sometimes. Mrs. Chen. The young women learning midwifery. Occasionally, Emma. My table held 2 plates now, sometimes 3, sometimes 5. Life had grown because I opened the door I'd locked. Not because a man rescued me, I was done with that story. but because I chose to open it myself. Chose to let people in again. People asked if I'd forgiven McKenna. Wrong question. Forgiveness isn't a moment. It's a practice. Some days were easier than others. Some days I still hated him. Some days I just felt tired. Some days I felt nothing at all. All of that was allowed. What I knew for certain, mercy wasn't weakness. It was the hardest, bravest thing I'd ever done. Harder than surviving my husband's death. Harder than living with injustice. Because mercy is active. Survival can be passive. But choosing mercy that required everything, I wasn't grateful for what happened. I wouldn't pretend that losing my husband was somehow meant to be, or that good came from it. That's not how this works. Evil is still evil. Loss is still loss. Justice delayed is still justice denied. But I was grateful for who I chose to become anyway. Some women in town still crossed the street when they saw me. Thought I'd betrayed my husband by helping McKenna. Let them think it. I knew what I did. I knew why. Their judgment couldn't touch that. On the anniversary of my husband's death, I visited his grave, brought flowers, sat in the grass, and talked to him the way I used to. I helped the man who killed you. I said, saved his wife, saved his son. I need you to know I didn't do it for him. I did it for me. The wind moved through the cottonwoods. I needed to know I was still the woman you loved, the healer, the one who saw life as sacred. I was afraid I'd lost her, afraid his bullet had killed her too. I traced my husband's name carved in the simple wooden marker, but she was still there, just buried under grief. I had to dig her out. Had to choose her. I'd survived my husband's death, survived injustice. But I didn't just survive. I decided who I'd become after loss. That decision was mine. McKenna couldn't take it. The law couldn't take it. Grief couldn't take it. No one could take it from me.